like our parents' generation
For sure.
and the generation above that. And I think that, that's why it is really special that my grandma took those steps because I don't think my mom wouldn't have taken those steps. And if I didn't have someone like that to take those steps for me, I don't know where I would be. Like, I don't know if I would have started that journey on my own or not.
Yeah.
So I am very grateful that I had um, support in my family, even if it was just that one person, because
Yeah,
that really
that's all you
changed the
need.
outcome.
Yeah, that's great. Do you think that, or does your therapist or psychiatrist or whoever you're seeing like point to like why it might have gotten to a point that you kind of like it was like a trigger of some sort that you were like, okay, now this is like something I can't live with because you said you've had these issues since you were 12, and I'm just curious like why you think or why you were told now is the time that like you need to address it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it had kind of gradually been getting worse.
Hmm.
And I also think that since I wasn't dealing with it, I would have so much anxiety going into a situation like a family dinner because I knew how I was going to
Right.
feel. So that would automatically set me off because I knew I was going into a situation where I was going to be feeling these feelings. Um, and and so I would already be really anxious, and then the chewing would start. And so I would focus so much on the chewing that then, like, my body was just freaking out. Um, and I also feel like there were so many negative reactions to it. Like, I would ask my family to just like play music in the background so the chewing wasn't as prevalent and things like that. Or like if I could sit in a certain spot, um, where like because there's certain triggers in my family, like some of my family members chewing is a little worse than others, so I would try and sit with the family members who don't trigger me as much, and all of that was just really problematic. So I feel like it just kind of built up to a point where I just had so much tension and anxiety in my body even before I went into the situation that I had nothing left in my cup for when I was actually in the chewing situation. And so I just like freaked out. And so and I think that Thanksgiving dinner was kind of a tipping point, and that also made me realize that, like, okay, this is actually like impacting my life, and I can't go to holidays and dinners and things like that because I know I'm going to freak out and I don't want to put
Mhm.
myself in that position. And then my family is starting to have negative feelings towards me because I won't go to dinners and things like that. And so I think it kind of built up to a point where I realized how much it was impacting my life. And then my family was kind of like, what is going on here? And so um, that's what kind of prompted, I think, my grandma to take those steps. And since I've taken the steps, I've realized how much that it really was impacting my life, and how much medicine has also helped that.
Yeah. So many things are coming up right now for me. I wanted to ask you first. So, like I said, when people talk about bipolar, they don't really mean they're talking about that, but they're like, oh, that person's acting that way, or that
Mhm.
person like is having high highs and low lows, and they're doing this and that. I feel like with what you're talking about, what is the word I don't
Misophonia.
misophonia. Um, a lot of people say that they can't stand that sound. So like,
Hmm.
does that come between like people taking you seriously or like you what you think? Like, is your family like, because I know that you said your grandma's pretty much the only one that's helping you out. So do you think that they're like, well, I don't like that sound either, but like I'm coping with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think yeah, like people don't, chewing noises aren't nice. And like,
Yeah.
especially when people are chewing with their mouth open, like I think a lot of people have uh, negative feelings towards that.
Yeah.
And so it does kind of get in the way a little bit. Like it gets awkward for me to like explain it to people. And so I'll just say like,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a chewing thing. Like I don't like chewing noises. Like I'll listen to music in the background. And so when I explain it like that, I feel like I'm downplaying it. And so then they are like, oh yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like those noises either.
Yeah.
Um, but
Hmm.
it also, like, it makes me feel weird and like crazy sometimes to be like, no, like my brain literally puts me into fight or flight mode mode because of a chewing noise. Like I feel weird and uncomfortable explaining that to someone.
Mhm.
So I don't, because I feel like they're going to think I'm like crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't not always like I don't not always go that route. I just kind of say
Mhm.
like, yeah, I really don't like chewing noises. And so sometimes it's helpful because people can relate to it and be like, oh yeah, I don't like those noises either. Like go ahead, put some stuff on. But it is also kind of isolating because I don't think they understand like the severity of what happens in my brain when I hear those noises. So yeah, I don't know. It kind of goes both ways, but
Yeah. I think it adds to the stigma a lot of the time. And again, I feel like it's my kind of my anxiety or something like holding me back from fully believing these things because I'm like, well, maybe not. But like, I think maybe some people don't get help or don't agree that we are getting help or like we have these diagnoses because they think they're also going through these things because they're like, oh, well, I have these sad thoughts, but like I'm getting through it or whatever. And it always makes me feel like almost silly, like, oh, why do I have to, or why am I like making this a big deal if somebody else isn't? So there's so much that goes into the stigma of it. And like
yeah.
the whole addition of your workplace is a whole different discussion, I feel like is not talked about. So did it come up just kind of organically that you had to talk about it that one day, or had it already been addressed? Like,
So the misophonia had been
mhm.
addressed. And all of my, because I work in a school and so we eat lunch in our classrooms and I have a co-teacher. So we have to eat lunch in our classrooms together. And so I obviously knowing that I'm going to have to be eating lunch with someone every day, I explained it to her and she was very understanding. And I will say, like all of my coworkers on my third grade team were all from I think 26 to 30. So we are
Yeah.
younger,
Hmm.
which I think makes it easier because I do feel like our generation is much more open
Yeah.
to things like that
Hmm.
and mental health. And so my team is very understanding of it. Like I play music in the background. If they're eating something crunchy, like they'll go somewhere else to eat it. And like for our big meetings that we have all together, like they ask for no food to be there, which it makes me feel very grateful. Um, but I have had problems with administration at my school, and I have been made a little bit to feel like I'm crazy by the older administration at my school
Hmm.
because I did open up to them, and I think maybe I shouldn't have done this because it wasn't any of their business, but I did open up to them that I had OCD because schedule changes are hard for me because I'm so structured in my days and what I do. And so if there's a sudden schedule change, it's hard for me to cope with that.
Hmm.
Um, and they were saying like I wasn't a team player and things like that.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, so I went to them and I was like, look, like I have OCD. That's why it is a little bit harder for me to cope with things. So like if it's earlier in the week and there's a sudden schedule change, like that's fine because that gives me a few more days to like make up that time that I had lost because I'm a special education teacher, so I have like legally mandated things that I need
Hmm.
to do each week. Um, but I said it like, if there's a sudden schedule change for the end of the week, like that's harder for me, and that's when I would prefer like if there's a sub or something that can come in because I was having to cover all these classes for my coworkers who were having meetings. And so I was having a hard time doing my job while having to cover all these classes. And so I went to administration and kind of said that. And then it was thrown back into my face a little bit, like mental health. And I did end up leaving my job this year. I'm finishing out the year with them because um I overheard a conversation about myself.
Oh no.
And so I started crying because it wasn't a good conversation. And
Yeah.
so I started crying and I said, you know what, I'm not comfortable right now. Like I would really like to go home for the day. Like I'm just not comfortable being here because I was a conversation by my administrators who are running the school. So I asked to go home. And then I got an email basically saying yeah, your mental health is the most important. It was kind of just like trying to phrase it in a way that like they don't think I'm stable. And so I didn't,
Oh my God.
yeah, so I did not appreciate that at all because like it's been something that I've been trying to work on all year, and it is an insecurity of mine, and to have it kind of thrown back in my face like that, I said this is
Like your
not the
worst
first
fear.
time.
Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
literally, because like part of my OCD and stuff is I always think I'm a problem. Like I think that everything I do is a problem. And so like they basically were like, yeah, you're the problem. And so that like reaffirmed everything that
Mhm.
I've been working in therapy to like disprove. And so yeah, I just decided that I was going to leave that environment. But I learned some lessons, and I do think I will be more uh, hesitant to disclose that information to bosses in the future.
I'm so sorry about that. That is, like I said, that's like the worst fear, I feel like, of a lot of people, that it's thrown in your face. And it's almost just like uncomfortable to get it said back to you. Like you're like, you say all this and then they say like, oh, well, you have this or whatever. And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like it's just uncomfortable. But no, I'm glad that you're leaving, because like that just sounds like they don't want to understand, and they don't want to like give you the accommodate. You don't even need accommodations. You're just asking for some like help with, you know what I
Right.
mean?
I was just trying to explain like where I was coming from when like I was having some issues taking on all of these last minute things.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to like say, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I'm dealing with on my end. So like if you do it at this time of the week, that's okay. I can work with that. If you do it at this time of the week, it's a little harder for me to work with that.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like was valid for me to say, but
I think
um,
I would even say that that's being more of a team player, being like honest and asking how you can make it the most efficient. Like it's not, you know what I mean? So ugh, that's just so unfair. But I think everything is probably going to be better getting away from that. I hope.
yeah. I mean,
um,
honestly, it's like it's been a blessing in disguise because I feel like since I've been interviewing other places, I feel like I was um I don't know the word for this, but like I feel like my light was dimmed there, I guess.
okay.
And so like now that I'm interviewing other places, I'm realizing like, oh wait, like I actually know a lot of what I'm talking about. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm actually good at this.
Yeah.
So I feel like, they just thought I was some person that they didn't really want to deal with, where other workplaces are like, wait, no, like you're awesome for those things. Come work with us. And so that's nice to see too.
Yeah, for sure. Were you in therapy before, like you realized that all of this was going on, or you
Yeah.
needed therapy? Yeah.
So I've been in therapy for 2 years, and then this year is when all of that stuff started happening. So
Oh,
I was
okay.
in therapy and talking about it all with my therapist.
And that was your first time going to therapy in your life?
Um, it's I would say my first time going to like legitimate therapy. I went to
Mhm.
therapy before COVID, and um now that I'm in this therapy program, I'm realizing that therapy program was basically just like a talking session, and I wasn't really getting anything
Yeah.
back from the therapist. Um, so this is technically my second time in therapy, but like the first time that I'm actually getting like EMDR treatments
Mhm.
and um like coping mechanisms and things like that.
Yeah. What would you say to anybody who's like therapy is for people that know that they have issues? Like, how has therapy helped you realize these things in yourself, or just helped you, like, because I know personally, I didn't have anything new going on when I was pregnant, but I was like, I need to be in therapy and change my medication because I need to get ahead of all this like postpartum
Right.
possibilities. And it felt good to just talk things out, and then things would come up like as you're talking. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe this is good that I'm like seeing a